everyone. Happy Friday. So, the other day we talked about the whole thing with Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. We were like, what the heck is going on? Why are they saying that Epstein killed himself? Like, what's happening inside the Trump administration? This doesn't look good. Well, now there's another controversy that's come up, and we've got to talk about it because I didn't believe it at first. Like I did so much digging because I'm like, this has got to be just a rumor. But it's not. So let's talk about it. It's around Trump's collaboration with Palantir Technologies to develop a national database with personal information on American citizens. And this is just adding to the bad publicity because there's a lot of people that are asking what the fuck, like what is going on? A lot of conservatives, big conservative accounts talking about this. A lot of Trump supporters talking about this and saying how this sure sounds like the beginning of a surveillance state. So I missed this, but I guess back in March, President Trump signed an executive order directing federal agencies to share data across departments, which I totally agree with. Like one of the things we saw with Doge was none of the systems in the different government agencies were talking to one another and they were completely outdated, kind of like a dinosaur system that is long overdue for an upgrade. And they should all be connected within our government. I mean, with today's technology, there's no reason why various government agencies wouldn't be a part of the same system for efficiency. Like that completely makes sense to me why they would want to connect everything. Well, what happened is Trump enlisted help from Palantir's software, notably its Foundry platform, to integrate the data from various agencies. So this includes the IRS, Social Security Administration, Department of Health and Human Services, which again is all fine, but here's where it gets concerning. The database aims to consolidate extensive personal data, so financial records like bank accounts and student loans, medical and disability information, biometric data, which that's a huge fucking red flag. That's what got my attention. Immigration status and voting records. And so this centralized database is intended to facilitate various government functions. So, like immigration enforcement and fraud detection. And this is where I get pissed off because we saw rampant fraud throughout our government thanks to Doge, yet no one was held accountable to this day. And the spending, it looks like, is going to actually increase instead of decrease. And not one person in our government has been held accountable. But they're going to use this technology to hold the American people accountable. And that really pissed me off. And then I started thinking, just imagine if they had this during COVID and how that could have led to, some serious issues infringing on our freedoms and rights. And I just feel like this is World Economic Forum type stuff that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I understand government tracking when it's government related data. So, even with student loans, I'm 100% okay with that if they're federally funded loans. And I do think it's fine for immigration status. And I think Palantir recently partnered with Fannie Mae to combat mortgage fraud, which I am also okay with if it's a federal government backed mortgage loan. Like, I think they should be able to track where federal money is going. And I think the government should be integrating these databases you talked about with like Social Security and taxes because there has been so much rampant fraud and waste, and we need an integrated system. But the red flag for me was when you mentioned personal data, like bank account information. Why would the government need to know my bank account information? So I started thinking about it and I'm like, well, I guess they already have this information because if you've ever done like direct deposit for a tax return, they have all your bank information anyway. So the question is like, how is this going to be used? And when you also talked about biometric data, I swear I saw something recently, like a controversial article about the TSA and how they're using biometric data at all the airports, like this new technology without people being aware of it. So that's a little concerning.
Yeah, I remember seeing that too. And they were saying for people that did the TSA pre-check, apparently when you sign up for that, you basically sign away your rights where they can they basically have a warrant to check anything or do anything they need to do. I don't know. I don't have all the details, but it was a big red flag. And the biometric data, I mean, I remember writing papers about this, back when it was a thing in the future and just how dangerous it can be. And here we are where it's very real and it's happening. And I think the thing that's making people so concerned is the company, Palantir, and its co-founder, Peter Thiel. So, Palantir Technologies, it's a powerful data analytics and surveillance company, and it was founded in 2003. But this isn't like a typical Silicon Valley tech company. Palantir was built from the ground up with CIA money. So it came from InQtel, which is the CIA's venture capital firm. And the co-founder of Palantir, Peter Thiel, a billionaire, he was the co-founder of PayPal. He was an early investor in Facebook. And I guess he's a longtime ally of Donald Trump, which I didn't realize. But he claims to be like libertarian leaning and an anti-globalist disruptor who believes in using technology to like shake up the power structures. But yet his company does tech surveillance and serves all of these deep state interests. So I'm not really buying what he's saying he's all about. And I mean, Palantir, it's literally known for mass surveillance. Their software already helps law enforcement, immigration, intelligence agencies like track people. It can predict behavior and connects personal data across platforms, including social media. So this makes me think about them being in on this whole backdoor access to Meta and Twitter during COVID. It's connected to financial records, phone data, and I guess Palantir's tools are used by ICE currently for immigration enforcement, but they're also used by LAPD, NYPD, and the military to track suspects, protesters, and targets. So it's already out there.
Oh, yeah, this has actually been used by LAPD since 2009 is when they started working with Palantir. And I think LAPD was actually one of the first law enforcement clients of the company. And the reason I remember this is because we used Palantir software when I was there to create a predictive policing program that was for like identifying and monitoring chronic offenders. So it would track like people's gang affiliation, what their parole status was, how many times they'd been stopped by the cops. And so I'm sure you can expect this didn't go over well with the liberal left in California because they said it was perpetuating racial bias, and LAPD always caves to the woke city government. So the department stopped using the program back in 2019. But I think they still use Palantir software for data analytic stuff to kind of like stay up to date with policing strategies. And I do think it does have its advantages with tracking criminals because, like you mentioned with ICE, Palantir has been working with ICE for 15 years. But just a few months ago, they secured a $30 million contract with ICE to develop a new surveillance platform called Immigration OS. And this is supposed to give ICE agents like real-time tracking of whether illegals are self-deporting and then help agents prioritize enforcement against, like transnational criminal gangs and people who overstay their visas. And I wonder maybe if this program had been used, then we wouldn't have had the incident in Colorado last week.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with the technology being used for this because if someone is a known criminal and they're here illegally, our government should be able to track them down and deport them. And as much as, we all know I'm concerned with AI on many levels, I also think we need to be a global leader in AI when it comes to military, which is something else Palantir is involved in. And that didn't just start with Trump, because Palantir has been one of the key players in modernizing our defense operations for years. And even during the Biden admin, they were awarded a $480 million contract in May of 2024. So I know I sound a bit hypocritical here because I don't trust this stuff, but at the same time, I do think there are some reasonable applications for our government to use this kind of software.
Well, and I don't think you sound hypocritical because it really is a topic I have been wrestling with. I've been going back and forth last night about this. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Can we trust it? Can we not? And I think before, like when you were saying you used it in the LAPD to try to track down criminals, it's like great. In a normal world, like that makes sense. But I think what scares me is what we saw over the last 4 years with Biden, and we're still seeing now with the left, where they're praising criminals
Mhm.
and they want to instead go after like normal law-abiding citizens, like conservatives or parents. That's what makes me fear something like this, is that if it gets in the wrong hands, then it could be used for a lot of nefarious purposes. It could be used against us. Like
Yep.
I definitely think that's in the realm of possibility. And it made me think about what happened after 9/11 with the Patriot Act. So back then, from what I understand, I mean, I wasn't into politics back then, couldn't even vote back then, but conservatives were pretty much for the Patriot Act at the time because, and I think a lot of people were, because it's like, hey, this is how we're going to target terrorists. This is a good thing. We need this for our national security. So everyone agreed to it. But then we saw years later what it actually did was it allowed the NSA to spy on American citizens without a warrant. It created these sneak and peek warrants where law enforcement could enter your home, search your property, and leave without notifying you until much later. And it was all justified in the name of terrorism. And I didn't realize this, but people or businesses that were served with Patriot Act subpoenas couldn't talk about it. There were like thousands of national security letters that were issued with permanent gag orders. So they could infringe on your rights and privacy, and you're not even allowed to tell anyone about it. Like that's messed up. I had no idea just like how far it went. And this is where the FISA courts were created. And we saw how those were used to go after Trump and spy on his campaign. And so it's like, conservatives were all for it because, again, in a perfect world, that's great. Like we should have the tools necessary to go after terrorists. But then years later, we see it weaponized against the conservatives that voted for it, and we're all for it. And I think this is the same thing. This sounds very similar, where it's being sold as, hey, this is a way to go after illegal migrants and criminals. But just imagine in the future, in another 4 years, you get another Democrat like Biden in office. What do you think they'll use it for? They're going to use it to go after conservatives again. And, with Palantir, this is like everything. This is including everything from the Pentagon, the CDC, which made me think about COVID and the authoritarian, style that they tried to implement during COVID. And come to find out, Palantir is the one that built the COVID data dashboards and election monitoring systems. And, now they're working on these massive identity databases. And I'm sorry, I don't trust that company, especially seeing what they were involved in the past. Not to mention, this is a private company. Okay. So this isn't like the government putting this together. This is Palantir, a private company, which means the software that it's using is theirs. You can't submit a FOIA request like you can with the Pentagon or any other government office. So that means there is essentially zero public oversight of how your data is being used and stored. And Palantir's algorithms can flag people for future threats even if they committed no crime. So, again, in a perfect world, great if we're trying to flag true criminals. But what did we see over the past 4 years? We saw parents that simply attended school board meetings that were labeled potential domestic terrorists. So, again, like in the wrong hands, this could be used against you or I if another crazy ass administration gets in place in a few years. And it makes me really nervous because I feel already like you and I are probably on a few FBI lists just for having this podcast. So just imagine like how much further they can take it.
Yeah, especially when you think about the AI component, because you mentioned the Foundry platform, but I was reading an article that also talked about there's another platform Palantir has called Gotham. And both of these platforms use AI to enable behavior profiling and predictive modeling, kind of like what it does for law enforcement. But like you said, it's very creepy when you think about the possibilities in the context of the average non-criminal American. Like even just the term behavior modeling is a little creepy, right? It's uncomfortable. So add AI to that and that like escalates the discomfort level for me. So who better to ask than AI, right? So I asked our GPT what the implications could be. And it explained how Palantir basically ingests this data from all the sources, the ones you mentioned, like financial and tax records, social media, our geolocation data, criminal history, health records, etc. And then it uses AI algorithms to map social networks so it can see who you're connecting to, who you're interacting with. It can analyze your personal habits and your patterns. So, for example, when you travel, when you make online purchases, and then it can score people for their risk level based on predefined threat models or whatever objectives it's given. So, it can flag people if they deviate from quote unquote expected behaviors. So, yeah, I'm sorry, like this is a red flag with privacy, right? But at the same time, I feel like this is already being done because if you have a smartphone, you're already being behavior modeled basically every day. You know, your phone knows where you go. I don't know if your phone does this, but mine, when I would open the GPS, it would ask me, are you going to XYZ? Because I had gone there so many times. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously they listen to us. We've talked about that multiple times. It tracks everything you purchase, everything you look at. So if you take your phone and you put it in a government database,
Yeah.
like your whole life is there.
Well, and this, what you just described, like behavior modeling for like expected behaviors, that's what the CCP is doing with their whole
Yes.
social credit system.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you listened to that episode with Catherine Fitz on, I think she was on Tucker.
On Tucker, yes, I
Yeah.
did.
And
Hmm.
she was saying how when she started speaking out, they like shut down her bank accounts. She couldn't get loans. And like this is essentially what we're talking about. It's like you go against the narrative or for whatever reason. And again, like back when they passed the Patriot Act, at that time, no one was thinking, you know, 20 years into the future, people are going to go after, the government's going to want to go after parents for school board meetings or people for not getting the COVID vaccine. Like none of that was even in the realm of possibility,
Hmm.
yet we experienced it. And so that's what's so concerning. But then again, like you said, it's already happening, you know? And the Patriot Act, that was the law that was passed that's allowing surveillance. This is just the technology that's letting them take it a step further. It's not that like they're passing a law, they're just basically getting better technology. So it's like I feel like we're already screwed in that regard unless they did something to repeal the Patriot Act. But then the other thing that this makes me think of with behavior modeling is again, Palantir is a private company. How do we know they're not selling that information to
Right.
other companies for advertising or whatever purposes? I mean, I just don't understand like where are the checks and balances to make sure that that doesn't happen? Because I haven't seen any so far. So yeah, it's very scary. I think I would be all for this if the last 4 years didn't happen. But
Hmm.
just where we were in terms of like, I was even getting nervous. Like, if Trump didn't get voted in, should we even continue this podcast? Like, that's how nervous I was getting with the level they were taking things to. Um, so this is just completely taking it to the next level that could be very scary. And maybe not in 3 years, maybe 10 years or 20 years. We don't know. But it's definitely considered a surveillance state at this point. There's no way of looking at it other than it's a complete surveillance state, which is what the CCP is.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. And then I'm just thinking too, if our phones are already spying on us, which they are, I mean, you just gave plenty of examples of that. Like, imagine if the Biden administration was able to listen in on like your phone conversations and hear people talking negatively about the COVID vaccine or talking about how they're going to vote for Trump or go to a Trump rally or how the election was stolen. Like I just feel like they would target you and try and ruin your life. So again, it's all good and well and sounds good on paper until you get a corrupt ass administration or the deep state that decides to use it to go after American citizens that just don't go along with their narrative. And that's the concern that a lot of Trump supporters are feeling right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to escalate that concern level by talking about Peter Thiel and his background because this guy is a mind fuck. And the deeper I went down the rabbit hole, like the more my alarm bells went off because this is like really bizarre. So, he's one of the Silicon Valley elites. You mentioned he co-founded PayPal. And at the time, the reason was because he wanted a financial system that was independent of government control, which seems to be the complete opposite of what he's doing now, creating technology that enables government to have more control than ever before, right? So you mentioned that he has an anti-globalist stance. Okay, if that's the case, why is he a member of the Bilderberg Group? We've talked about this many times. This is one of the most secretive and non-transparent organizations for the global political and business elite. And they 100% have a globalist agenda. So, according to our GPT, Thiel has been involved in the Bilderberg Group since 2007. And he's attended meetings pretty consistently every year. And he's currently a member of the Bilderberg Group steering committee. So it's not like he's just a casual member. He's actively involved in this group. Yet at the same time, he calls the Davos elite, quote, the woke-minded virus. So again, total contradiction, right? Well, he's also invested in a company called Bravada Networks. What does this company do? They develop military-grade communication satellites, and they have their hands in military communications in 33 different countries around the world. So the question is, how does all of this play into the global communications infrastructure and looking at global privacy issues? Like, I find it very interesting that this guy has vocally denounced democracy as a failure. And he once said that he doesn't believe that freedom and democracy are compatible. And he expresses support for libertarianism while also promoting this total techno authoritarian globalist agenda. Yet at the same time, he's very outspoken about America being like a strong and sovereign nation, right? So he's against government overreach from a democracy perspective, but he fully supports a government framework where society is being led by the intellectually superior elites using elite managed technology and surveillance systems. Like, is that not fucking scary?
No, it's terrifying. And I think we have to apply the rule that actions speak louder than words. Because when you
Mhm.
look at his actions, I mean, the way that I look at Bilderberg Group is like there's like the World Economic Forum down here, and Bilderberg Group is like their daddy. Like that's the way I look at it. And so those are his actions, and his words don't line up with his actions. So the words he's saying to try to project this image, I mean, if you were part of the deep state and you wanted to have complete control, you're going to say things that sound really good and that align with Trump and America First and all this stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, look at the guy's actions. This is like a case study of what it is to be a globalist, a part of the elite deep state.
Yeah, have you heard of something called the dark alignment movement? Dark enlightenment
Uh-uh.
movement? Okay, so Thiel, is it Thiel or Thiel?
I think it's Teal. That's what I've heard other
Okay.
people call him.
Okay. Well, he is connected with this guy named Curtis Yarvin, who is like the architect of dark enlightenment, which is an ideology that basically critiques liberal democracy and instead proposes a governance model that's like a corporate structure with a CEO in charge, right? And he argues that democratic institutions are inherently flawed and they should be replaced by a system where authority is centralized and doesn't have to abide by traditional checks and balances. So it's like this is a total authoritarian style of government,
It's like the
right?
new world order that the World
Yes.
Economic Forum talks about. That's exactly what it is.
Yes, it's so crazy. And so now let's dive into Teal's relationship with Trump because here's where I get the feel I go back to like the feeling I had on Monday's episode talking about Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and their, perceived lack of transparency and how things just aren't sitting right with some things this administration's doing. And I always say I have faith in Trump. I mean, I do. But then you and I had a conversation offline yesterday about this, Palantir, and the conspiracy side of me starts wondering like, what if like we're all just being duped? Like, what if we're just completely naive? And I desperately want to believe that Trump has our country's best interest at heart. And maybe he's being misguided, maybe he's put his trust in the wrong people. So I asked our GPT about the extent of Trump's relationship with Thiel. And apparently they've been friends for quite a while. And when Trump was running for presidency in 2016, Thiel contributed over 1.25 million to Trump's campaign. He gave a speech at the RNC, and he was part of Trump's transition team when he won the election. And what's interesting is he played a very significant role and had a lot of influence in helping to shape Trump's cabinet during his first administration, especially in areas related to tech and innovation. And I guess he was a key player in facilitating meetings between Trump and all these like global tech industry leaders. He organized a tech summit at Trump Tower back in 2016. And several people with close ties to Thiel were in Trump's first cabinet. You have Michael Kratsios, who was Trump's deputy U.S. chief technology officer in 2017. And this guy was formerly chief of staff at Thiel Capital. Then there was Jim O'Neill, who was Trump's secretary of health and human services. And prior to that, he was a managing director at another capital group that Thiel has called Mithril Capital. And he was also a board member of another Thiel affiliated organization called the Seasteading Institute. Then there was Trace Stevens, who was a partner at Thiel's Founders Fund and was involved in the Department of Defense transition team during Trump's first administration. And this guy apparently had a lot of influence on defense policies. When we look at Trump's current administration, we have the White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, who is a close affiliate of Thiel's, and so is Jay Bhattacharya, the director of the NIH, who reportedly has been friends with Thiel since they went to college together back at Stanford. And also, J.D. Vance is considered to be Thiel's protege, and Thiel had invested very heavily in Vance's career, including making a $15 million donation to Vance's 2022 Senate campaign. And get this, Thiel is also the person who initially introduced J.D. Vance to Trump at Mar-a-Lago in February of 2021. So these ties run deep.
Okay, my heart just completely sank. Okay, it's like because JD Vance, I look at him as, the what's it called, the hillbilly elegy,
Mhm.
um, and I had no idea that
Right.
he
Me
is,
neither.
has these ties. And just think about this. if this guy, if Thiel invested 1.25 million in Trump's campaign, but donated 15 million to JD Vance's Senate, what the hell? Like, what is going
Right.
on? Like, he basically bought JD Vance, like, it bought his way into the Senate, it sounds like. I mean, that's weird. And then just with you saying, like, he is the one that helped shape Trump's cabinet in the first term. That's the issue that's been publicly talked about was how in his first term, the transition team was terrible and
Yeah.
he got all these people that he couldn't trust that really impeded any progress. But here they take the same guy that helped implement that and he's working with him in the second term. Like this, it just doesn't make sense. And but then it's got me thinking, well, if he has a surveillance company, like does he have dirt on Trump or like one of his kids? Like what is going on? But this my heart sank because none of it looks good. Like this looks
Right.
really, really, really bad. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I would take a successful business owner over a career politician or government bureaucrat any day. So it's not that. It's just Peter Thiel and his history and everything you just said completely gives me the creeps. He also seems to be part of this whole transhumanist movement that we hear
Mhm.
about with like the World Economic Forum, which I just, again, like it sends shivers down my spine. It's just very unsettling. And that led me down this completely other rabbit hole with him, where I guess he's an investor in this biotech startup called Mini Circle. And Sam Altman is the other big investor, which I don't like him either. And apparently, they're conducting human trials in Prospera, Honduras, without any FDA oversight. And I guess their focus, at least what it says on paper, is follistatin gene therapy, which is supposed to enhance muscle growth and longevity by inhibiting myostatin, which is a protein that limits muscle development. So it's one of these things with, these elites that are trying to live forever.
Mhm.
And they're also developing gene therapies that are intended to produce antibodies against HIV. Now, what's weird about this whole thing is the fact that it's being done in Prospera, Honduras, because Prospera operates under this unique legal framework that allows companies to choose their own regulatory standards from all of these international options. And they get to propose custom regulations tailored to their operations. So basically, they have complete control and no oversight. No FDA approvals needed, limited monitoring of trials and safety and efficacy. And then there's also questions about the participants in these trials. Like, are they fully informed and aware of potential risks? Because there's no oversight. We don't know. And I guess this whole thing is turned into like medical tourism where people are reportedly paying upwards of $25,000 for a treatment. And we're talking about a place where you can do biotech research and development with no oversight, which is incredibly concerning considering Peter Thiel's company, Palantir, is going to have a database with all of our biometric data. So, this
Right.
is why it's so concerning. I mean, they could be like cloning people and we would have no I freaking idea. Like, how would we know? No, there's no oversight. So, all of these themes of biometric data and surveillance, this is exactly what the globalists at the World Economic Forum have been talking about to usher in a new world order. So, you know, to your point, is Trump being duped or is he in on it? And so many questions come up. It's like part of me thinks, okay, was this whole thing one big ass psyop with like getting Biden in and making things so bad that we'd be begging for Trump to come back in and do literally anything necessary to fix what Biden broke? Part of me wonders if that's true, especially considering The Trump administration promised multiple times to release the Epstein client list. And not only has it not been released, but we've learned nothing new. And now they're saying it was actually a suicide when everyone knows it probably wasn't. They promised to release the JFK files. And so far, I haven't heard a damn thing that I didn't already know about it. You have Republicans that have the presidency, the House, and the Senate, yet not a damn thing has been accomplished so far. They promised to cut wasteful spending, and Doge did all of that work, but now they're pushing through this massive spending bill that increases spending and undoes pretty much everything that Doge did. And like even Elon Musk has been calling this out. He posted on X saying, quote, "The spending bill contains the largest increase in the debt ceiling in US history. It is a debt slavery bill." So he's raising the alarms, and I kind of trust that because he probably knows exactly who these elites like Peter Thiel are. And above all of that, not one freaking person has been held accountable for anything. Not Fauci for his role in COVID or Pelosi for her role in January 6th. No arrests have been made. And now we have this mass surveillance state with the shadiest billionaire leading the way. So, yeah, to your point, like I'm freaking questioning everything. And like you, I want to believe that Trump has the country's best interests at heart. My gut tells me he does. And like he really wants to do what's best and he really believes in America first. But we know that the deep state runs deep. And if it were all one big psyop that Trump was in on, I don't think so many of his executive orders would be paused by judges. Um, And I don't think they would have gone through all those trials, like with his kids and all that kind of stuff, if he was in on it. And then when you look at like the two big issues that Americans voted on, it was the border and the economy. And he has done a great job so far, despite all the judges working against him. The border is the most secure it's ever been now. Inflation is the lowest it's been in 4 years. The tariffs are working. We have trillions of dollars in American investments. They're bringing manufacturing back to the US. So there are plenty of wins for this administration. But I do think it's important that we call these things out that seem shady because I sure as hell don't trust these elite billionaires. I don't trust Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, and Scott Bessent. And they have all weaseled their way into working with this administration. And I think we got to call it out when things don't seem right. And things do not seem right.
No, and the direction we're heading is completely away from anything that's voted on by the people. And it's really just going to be this, again, authoritarian, technocratic society with
Yeah.
the elites in control. And it's just which elites are going to be in control. Are they on the side of good or the side of evil?
Right. Yeah. Again, it's that good and evil. And like we've said so many times, the evil isn't just going to lay down and take it. Like there's going to be a battle. And I think, he's got to be careful in who he trusts. And I want to believe he's on the side of good, but we'll see. I would love to know what everyone listening thinks too, because I know, people are for it, people are against it. Let us know. I'm very curious. And we'll keep an eye on where this goes and what other shady things are happening. Um, and so far, like this past, week and a half has not been a good look for the Trump administration. So I hope they wake up and turn it around because this direction is not good. So that's what we have. Have fun with that. That just threw me for a loop, and hopefully we'll have some better news come Monday. So everyone have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.